we've got the makings of the Obama doctrine. The Obama doctrine, which is coddling enemies and alienating allies. Don't retreat, reload.
Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords is one of at least 10 members of Democratic leaders, who Democratic leaders say have been targeted because of their vote on health care. And she joins us this morning from Washington. Congresswoman, I guess my first question is, what happened to your office in Tucson? And do you have any doubt that this is a direct result of your vote on health care?
I was the first member of Congress on the floor to slap down a bill to repeal Obamacare.
Well, obviously, we weren't there. The office closed after the health care vote, and sometime between midnight and 2 a.m., we were alerted that the front door of our office, which is a glass panel door, had been either kicked out, shot out, or just basically destroyed. Whether or not it was a direct effect, obviously we weren't there. The police are investigating, there are federal authorities investigating, but obviously the coincidence of this happening is, it's fairly likely, but obviously we don't know at this point.
Are you afraid? Are you fearful today?
You know, I'm not. We've had hundreds and hundreds of protesters over the course of the last several months. Our office corner has really become an area where the Tea Party movement congregates, and the rhetoric is incredibly heated. Not just the calls, but the emails, the slurs. So, I mean, things have really gotten spun up. I mean, we've got to think about it. Our democracy is a light, a beacon, really, around the world because we affect change at the ballot box and not because of these, you know, outbursts of violence in certain cases and the yelling and the, you know, it's just, you know, change is important. It's a part of our process, but it's really important that we focus on the fact that we have a democratic process.
Sarah Palin put the crosshairs up on her website. That's a person in a position of authority. Her other example was, you know, Keith Olbermann says, worst person in the world. Well, first of all, it's comedy. It's tongue-in-cheek. And it's very different than what Alan West talks about, what Michelle Bachmann talks about. I want to, you know, keep my opponent scared to come out of his house. I want Minnesotans armed and dangerous.
Do you think Republican members of the House, the Republican leadership, should have spoken out more forcefully to denounce this violence, or are you satisfied with what they've said? For example, the Minority Leader John Boehner was on Fox News denouncing violence.
Well, I would say that the type of verbal attacks that you're known for are conversation stoppers.
Can you give me one example of those?
Tiller the killer.
No,
Tiller the killer is
Tiller the baby killer.
I think it's important for all leaders, not just leaders of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. There's certainly a lot of independents out there that they may not even resonate towards, but community leaders, figures in our community to say, look, we can't stand for this. I mean, this is a situation where people don't, they really need to realize that the rhetoric and firing people up and, you know, even things, for example, we're on Sarah Palin's targeted list, but the thing is that the way that she has it depicted has the crosshairs of a gun sight over our district. And when people do that, they've got to realize there's consequences to that action.
Well, but in fairness, the campaign rhetoric and war rhetoric have been interchangeable for years. And so that's, is there not, I mean, is there a line here? I mean, I understand, you know, in the moment it may look bad, but, you know, is that, do you really think that's what she intended?
You know, I can't say. I'm not Sarah Palin. But what I can say is that in the years that some of my colleagues have served, 20, 30 years, they've never seen it like this. We have to work out our problems by negotiating, working together, hopefully Democrats and Republicans. I understand that this health care bill is incredibly personal, probably the most significant vote cast here for decades, frankly. But the reality is that we've got to focus on the policy, focus on the process, but leaders, community leaders, not just political leaders, need to stand back when things get too fired up and say, whoa, let's take a step back here.
And on the flip side, you know, some on the other side of the aisle have suggested that maybe in some ways Democrats are reaching out to highlight these instances of violence because they want to make it seem like, you know, that's who the Republican Party is. This crazy, violent wing of the Republican Party represents the norm. Are you concerned that Democrats may be using this as a political opportunity?
Well, I don't think about it that way. I mean, you know, that's certainly not what we're doing. Republicans in my area, and I have a very mixed district, we're fortunate to have a pretty balanced community. But the reality is, when you look at these examples around the country which really try to incite people and inflame emotions, then, you know, chances are they're going to have a couple of people, extremes on both sides, frankly, not just on the Republican side, but we have seen Democratic extreme activism as well. I mean, most of the country is in the middle, but we do have, you know, these polarized parts of our parties that really get excited, and that's where, again, community leaders, not just, you know, the political leaders, but all of us have to come together and say, okay, you know, there's a fine line here.
All right, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords from Southern Arizona, a great part of the state.
Probably one of the most perfectly balanced swing districts in the country.
It's a unique
district there. Yes, it is. All right. Thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Like millions of Americans, I learned of the tragic events in Arizona on Saturday, and my heart broke for the innocent victims. No words can fill the hole left by the death of an innocent.
Some people don't want to talk about it. Some conservatives are already dismissing a real discussion. They say this isn't a time to bring up Sarah Palin asking people to reload or Michelle Bachmann calling for voters to be armed and dangerous. This is not a time to limit conversation, in my opinion. This moment is important, and having this debate is part of the healing process for this country. At the beginning of the program, I said everything is on the table. I've been thinking a lot about my own words over the weekend. Every commentator and political figure should be doing the same thing, I think. There is passion on both sides, but I reject the claim that the left is just as bad as the right. Show me the soundbite from a Democratic lawmaker that is equivalent to this.
I'm a foreign correspondent on enemy lines, and I try to let everyone back here in Minnesota know exactly the nefarious activities that are taking place in Washington. I want people in Minnesota armed and dangerous on this issue of the energy tax because we need to fight back. Thomas Jefferson told us having a revolution every now and then is a good thing, and the people, we the people, are going to have to fight back hard if we're not going to lose our country.
Now, could you imagine Jim Clyburn talking like that? In my opinion, when a congresswoman tells her constituents to be armed and dangerous, this isn't rhetoric. That's a call to action. She is advocating a behavior. During the midterm campaign, Sarah Palin's Political Action Committee put these crosshairs over Democratic districts, including that of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords.
There's an ad that she ran.
That's the person who was running against the Congresswoman.
Right, which said help remove her from office. And in the next line, talked about firing M16s.
Rebecca Mansour with Tammy Brucia.
Again, maybe it wasn't done on the record enough by us when this graphic came out. The graphic is just, it's basic. We never, ever intended it to be gun sites. It was simply crosshairs like you see on the map.
Well, it's a surveyor symbol. Rebecca.
Surveyor symbol.
Yeah.
And no, but I just want to say this, Tammy, if I can.
Please.
You know, the graphic was done. It was done not even in house. We had a professional who does a political graphic artist, consultant do this for us.
Don't retreat, reload.
This hasn't been a great week in terms of, I think, like the Constitution and where it says that you're supposed to, everyone, it's a mandate to have insurance. But I think the way that some Republicans are handling this is nothing more than purely despicable. The names that are next to and being highlighted by those crosshairs, I think it's an abuse of the Second Amendment and advertising. I also feel as though every single person on here is a mother, a father, a friend, a brother, a sister. And to take it to this level,
despicable.
It's disappointing to see this come from the party. I would hope that leaders like Sarah Palin,
So a reporter said, "Hey, Sheriff, can you say anything about a possible motive for this?"
When you look at
unbalanced people, how they respond to the vitriol that comes out of certain mouths about tearing down the government, the anger, the hatred, the bigotry that goes on in this country is getting to be outrageous.
Stop the tape a second. Who is it that's tearing down the country and tearing down the government? Who is it that's running around apologizing for the country all over the world, Sheriff? Who is it that's running around admitting to dictators and thugs around the world the U.S. is guilty? Who's doing that, Sheriff? President of the United States is, Sheriff.
You know, when you float terms like tyranny, as they do, or treason, remember in the healthcare debate, Republican congressmen were hoisting that banner that said, "Don't tread on me," which really had previously only applied to enemies of America, not political opponents. You create an atmosphere. Yes, you do.
It is God who gave us our rights, not government.
In times like these, we need God's guidance and the peace He provides.
You're also working, Senator, for re-election, and I understand that Sarah Palin will be joining you in Arizona as you campaign tomorrow. And as we just saw from Kelly O'Donnell's report, she has used some pretty incendiary language. She tweeted in response to the healthcare vote, "Common sense conservatives and lovers of America don't retreat, instead reload." And on her Facebook page, she also posted a map highlighting weak Democratic districts that conservatives should target with a crosshair symbol. Considering these threats, these concerns that we've been hearing about regarding violence, do you now recommend that your party use less incendiary language? And will you say that to her tomorrow?
And I have seen the rhetoric of targeted districts as long as I've been in politics. Please, any threat of violence is terrible, but to say that there's a targeted district or that we reload or go back into the fight again, please.
Well, those are not my words. Those are her words.
Those are fine. They're used all the time. Those words have been used throughout my political career.
But should they be perhaps used less? Sorry for interrupting, Senator.
There are targeted districts, and there are areas that we call battleground states, and so please, that rhetoric and kind of language is just part of the political lexicon. It is no place for threats of violence or anything else, but to say that someone is in a battleground state is not originated today.
Senator, with all due respect, and I heard what you had to say. Let me just inject this one question, sir.
Sure.
And the question is, even if what you're saying is accepted by everyone, that this is the language of campaigning, this is the language of politics, given, however, the sensitivity regarding this particular bill, should this still be the language of this day, given how much we are hearing about hundreds of calls regarding threats, about vandalism, about the gas line of a congressman's brother's home being cut? Sir, these are very dangerous times. Is this the language that we should be hearing today?
The language that we should be using today is the language that we are using.
Show me the soundbite from a Democratic lawmaker that is equivalent to this.
I'm a foreign correspondent on enemy lines, and I try to let everyone back here in Minnesota know exactly the nefarious activities that are taking place in Washington. I want people in Minnesota armed and dangerous on this issue of the energy tax, because we need to fight back. Thomas Jefferson told us having a revolution every now and then is a good thing, and we the people are going to have to fight back hard if we're not going to lose our country.